Good. Okay, good afternoon. Today I'm joined by Social Development Minister Paul Bennett for a pre-budget announcement on welfare reform. As you're aware, welfare reform is an important part of the National Lead Government's program. We're making good progress on what are significant changes to the system, and today we're here to talk about some of the details of the first phase of reform which are included in Budget 2012. We've always been very clear that our welfare reforms will require upfront investment, particularly in the early stages, to get more people off welfare and into work. We're prepared to invest to get people into work. You will see from the material before you, which the Minister will explain in more detail shortly, that we're making a considerable investment in the first phases of reforms. As we've indicated before, we expect the full cost of welfare reforms to be in the vicinity of $520 million over 4 years, which we estimate will be offset by savings of $1 billion over 4 years. Today we're announcing how much we'll be investing in the first phase of welfare reform. Phase 1 affects young people, both those already on a benefit as well as those 16 and 17-year-olds who are on a collision course with the welfare system. It also affects some people on a sole parent, widows or women alone benefit. The amount we'll be spending on the first phase is $287.5 million over a 4-year period. That includes paying for childcare, which is absolutely vital to the success of these welfare reforms. We are investing $80 million to cover the costs of childcare for those on benefits so that they can get back to work. It's a substantial investment, but one we consider to be more than justified. It will remove a significant barrier for many people who we will be supporting to get into education, training or work. We know that without significant intervention, teen parents are more likely to stay on a benefit for longer than any other group. We're ensuring that they can get help with parenting and budgeting skills and get support to reach NCEA Level 2, or in some cases to go into training or work-based learning. Other sole parents will also be able to access childcare through this package, and we will have dedicated staff at Work and Income to help them. The Minister will expand on that in a moment. Finally, I want to stress that right now we have 12% of the working age population in New Zealand on welfare, with 220,000 children living in benefit-dependent homes. We are spending more on those who are likely to stay on welfare long term, and that's why over time you'll see the costs of welfare reduce. As you know, in March I announced the government's 10 key result areas in a speech about better public services. These are 10 special areas where we have set clear results about what we want to achieve over the next 3 to 5 years. These welfare reforms tie into 3 of those result areas. The first is reducing the number of people who have been on a benefit for more than 12 months. Second is increasing participation in early childhood education. And the third is increasing the proportion of 18-year-olds with NCEA Level 2. We are determined to ensure more New Zealanders get opportunities to have a better life in work and not on welfare. So I'll hand over to Paula. She'll make any comments you want, as is the normal drill. We'll take questions from you, and then we'll come back and do the normal other questions and other areas you might have.
Thank you, Prime Minister. So, as the Prime Minister said, the first phase of welfare reforms will cost $287.5 million, and the $80 million for childcare as a vital component within that. This is broken up into 2 parts. $44 million will be spent on early childhood education places, which we're essentially buying from the Ministry of Education. A further $36.1 million is for the guaranteed childcare assistance payment. This subsidy provides up to $6 per hour towards childcare for up to a maximum of 50 hours per week, and it can also help some of those teen mums with travel costs. As we begin working with teen parents to get them into education and training, and with other sole parents going into work, we need to remove the barriers to achieving those goals. Having dedicated frontline staff available is also vital to helping job seekers, in particular, overcome any barriers to work or training. So we're investing a $55.1 million in 155 dedicated Work and Income staff who will do this. We've been very clear youth are the main focus of the first part of welfare reform. We cannot continue to allow our young people to drift into the welfare system at a young age where they are at risk of becoming long-term welfare dependent. 90% of disengaged 16 and 17-year-olds will go on to an adult benefit unless we intervene. Evidence tells us teen parents who go on a benefit are likely to spend at least 7 of the next 10 years on welfare. They are more likely to have more children while on welfare, and their children are likely to go on welfare themselves in years to come. The future for them and their children is incredibly challenging. Under the old system, 16 and 17-year-olds and 16 to 18-year-old teen parents were handed a sum of money every week and left to get on with it. This will change. Under the new system, we are spending $148.8 million on services for young people. This includes budgeting and parenting courses, payments to youth service providers, and a $10 a week incentive payment to young people. This also includes milestone payments for those youth service providers who will be given real flexibility to work with these young people to get them into education or training. $77.6 million is going to support the roughly 14,000 disengaged 16 and 17-year-olds who are not in education, employment or training. We're specifically targeting funding at this group because they are most at risk of ending up on welfare. Previously, Youth Transition Services had used their funding to provide universal services to a much wider age group. That means, in many cases, they are contacting and working with young people who are going to be just fine and don't need intervention. We are targeting the support where it's most needed. As a result of this investment, we are going to be spending more on youth services than we do currently, an extra $75 million over 4 years. Also included in the youth services component of this package is $1 million to fund the cost of approved long-acting reversible contraception for young people. We'll pay for the doctor's visit and the cost of the LARC itself, where the cost is not fully funded by Pharmac. This will be available firstly to those in the youth package, but will be extended to the wider beneficiary population. By delivering these welfare reforms, I know I can look New Zealanders in the eye and say this is a system that will be tough but fair. It will cost more upfront, but it will mean fewer people on welfare in the long run. These are the reforms that New Zealanders voted for and that we will deliver.
Okay, questions?
Where does that reprioritise money come from?
Yeah, from a number of places. So some is from the YTS, as I said earlier, so that's coming from YTS and some from the Youth Vote funding. That's about $58.8 million. We've got a remainder in a tagged contingency. We've got 81.5, that's new money, that's coming from your operating allowance. We've got about $96 million that's coming from out years and employment assistance that we're bringing forward and spending earlier and putting into this new way of working, and about $40 million is coming from an underspend in a QS&I fund.
So you're not worried that you're cutting services to pay for them?
No. So what we're doing is, as you can see with the YTS in particular, we are reconfiguring it, but we're not actually cutting any other services as such to put into this. We are reprioritising some other areas, but most of it's from underspends that haven't been as effective as we'd like them to be. Well, we certainly have concerns about subsequent children and children being born, particularly to those on welfare, and we see the access to contraception as actually being a barrier, and particularly the cost around it. Pharmac fully fund the greater percentage of a lot of it, but there's still a cost and that's seen as a barrier. So we actually thought that if you're going to be working with the subsequent children policy, then we need to also be actually making sure that everyone's got access to that contraception.
Aren't there issues though around the state providing this kind of service?
Well, I think the state already does, because we do fully fund contraception for women predominantly. And so the fact that we do, what we're doing is actually trying to take down those barriers for those that are on a benefit when they're on such limited income, and that can be a barrier for them when accessing their contraception. And it being for just... Yeah, well, this is the welfare reforms part one, and so we've got major reforms that are still coming through the system, and you will see other groups that are identified there. This is unashamedly targeted, predominantly at those 16 to 18-year-olds. They are the ones most likely to stay on benefit longer. They are the ones whose children are most likely to be disadvantaged. We are targeting more money, more services, and I think it's the right place for it to be.
Is it concerned that such extreme targeting could lead to people falling through the gaps if they're not picked up by a wider youth transition services?
Yeah, look, there will still be funding available for those that are over 18 years old or for those that are not deemed as being NEET. There's many other services that are out there that provide to them. But we are quite unapologetically targeting those who are not engaged in education, employment and training and are quite frankly on a collision course to welfare. The younger you go on, the longer you are likely to be there. And you know, there's heaps of evidence that says once you're there for longer than 6 months, your likelihood of getting off diminishes by the day. And we want, you know, a brighter future and more opportunities for them. So get in younger, really target it, and we think we'll see results.
Will there be any obligations for them to take up the contraception or incentives if they do?
No, there won't be. We're just making it available and they can come in and apply for that extra assistance.
How much of the 77.6 million will be granted specifically to the milestone or incentive payments that are public providers?
Right, so of that 148 million, about 77.6 million is going to be for the NEET, and the rest is going. So what you're seeing is about 13.5 million is going in for the actual incentive payments to the young person themselves, and most of the rest of it is going into actually providing the service to them. And so they will be milestones. So you've got an administration fee up front to the service provider, and you will then pay them as they achieve milestones for that young person.
And is that 13 million, is that the $10 a week that they receive if they do something?
Yeah, and it's $10 a week if they complete the budgeting, and then another $10 a week if they complete, if they're a parent, if they complete all parenting, and then another $10 a week if they do 6 months in education.
Last week, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance both talked about the early childhood education funding and said that they were looking at increasing participation, particularly Maori Pacifica children. Where is that reflected in this package?
Yeah, I mean, that's really what this package is about. I mean, as the Prime Minister said, it does cover one of our key result areas. 56% of teen parents are Māori, so the things that, so 56% of it is being targeted to those young people. Pacific teens are 1.5 times more likely to get pregnant than European as well. So it's very much targeted at Māori and Pacific young women and their children in particular. And as such, we can hopefully see an increase in that participation if we're really picking up that cost. And of course, it's now a requirement that if you're receiving the benefit, then you must be in, you yourself must be in some form of training, and so of course children need to be looked after.
The Prime Minister also said that there could be some people who lose around the margins. Can you explain what that is? On the ECE funding?
Well, I mean, you know, I'm sure the Prime Minister can sort of speak to that more, but I mean, once you start targeting and putting more money in where it's really needed, then, you know, there's X amount of places. We need more in New Zealand. There's no two ways about that. But, you know, is there places for everyone and is there funding on the margins? Well, I say we've got targeting this specifically to those children, and I think it's where all evidence says it's needed most.
We're not in detail today, but essentially in early childhood education there are some minor changes, and those changes could result in margins, and some people getting not necessarily less funding over time, but not necessarily more as the general inflation rate increases. No, so essentially what's happening is the emphasis of new money, if you like, or reprioritised money, is going into targeting particularly low socio-economic groups, which are heavily dominated by Māori and Pacific. So essentially that's where the new funding is going, and other areas aren't necessarily getting new funding, so it's really at the margins.
So more about funding central organisations as opposed to how parents access it?
Yeah, that would be a good characterisation.
You talked there about pulling some of the funding allocated for our years forward. How much is the total of that?
We are bringing forward $96.4 million. So each year in employment assistance, we spend about $130 million, so in some of those out years we're bringing some forward to spend, and quite frankly it makes sense because ultimately we're spending that on services that are provided outside of, so it's been counted as part of this.
Right, in terms of the results you talked about, this package leading to a drop in the number of long-term well-being. Have you got a number on that? And over the next 3 to 5 years, how can we tell how much is due to this package and how much might be due to economic growth?
Well, this will probably be the exact numbers. It's $1 billion in terms of the estimated reduction in benefit costs. I can't tell you the exact breakdown, but all of my values. And the answer is to the latter part of the question. I think that there are always a number of dynamic factors taking place in the economy. So as we know, when things get weaker, economically more people go on to a benefit program for the unemployment, but more people go on benefit. So it's not exactly as if we're operating in an environment that's immune, except that. And we certainly expect the economic conditions to be stronger over the next 2 or 3 years. But I'd say the combination of a better economy and this package certainly helps with
Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately I say it doesn't matter, you know, as long as we are, I mean, what it's got is everyone pretty focused on those key areas and where we are, and if the sooner we get in, then the better off we're going to be as far as bringing down those long-term, or like for 12 months or more on benefit.
That $1 billion figure, what's it
What's
based
it
on?
on?
What's that $1 billion based on? I mean, what sort of economic turnaround do we need to see to achieve that?
Yeah, well, we're saying that these policy changes, you know, should see that kind of saving long term and that kind of numbers coming off. So, you know, that's the kind of projections we've seen to date. I think particularly though, as you see the welfare reforms part 2 that will be coming out in about August this year, I think that will, as we get into the policy detail, which we're in now, and that starts winding itself out, you may see those figures move around a little bit. At the moment, they are estimates from Treasury and MSD, and they're about, you know, sort of the best guess really.
I mean, if you have a look at it in Future Focus, when we implemented that, had some quite clear changes to the number of people who were on long-term beneficiaries. In certain areas, we're introducing things like work testing for mothers on the DPB. Well, that's a new requirement effectively, so that's obviously going to have some impact. So if you track your way through those, I think you can see real changes. And in fact, actually, look at our benefit numbers, as you know, because we release them very regularly. They're continuing to track lower. And I think the Household Labour Force survey last week was more a reflection on people's confidence they might get a job than a concern that the economy is not producing enough jobs.
Just on the childcare subsidies, how much do you spend roughly on childcare subsidies for everyone else, not specifically?
Well, I can only speak at it from a welfare perspective because that's kind of what I'm in charge of. And it's hundreds of millions, so I don't have that figure directly in front of me, but it's hundreds of millions that we spend on subsidies, particularly for those that are not just on benefit, but also for those that are lower income and are eligible for the weaker income subsidy.
And in broad terms, ECE funding was about $1.4 billion last year, so that's the overall level of expenditure where the government subsidises parents to send their child to a early childhood facility.
So we can add 44 million for that?
That's it.
What's the average estimated cost of childcare for a standard parent? And how does that compare to this installer for our subset? What's the difference?
Yeah, look, by the best modelling that they've done, and MSD worked really closely with education on this. It sort of depends, I would tell you. So it's different for Kohanga, it's different for different regions, it's different for different types of childcare. So we have taken, we believe that $6 an hour on top of what's already going on via education, and that 44 million should cover the costs of someone putting their child in. But that's an average, so some might be 7 or 8, some are 3 or 4, some are actually free in some community-based centres, but as you know, with early childhood, it's an incredibly complex and diverse kind of sector, and it would depend where you are. But we've kind of gone for the upper end, if you like.
What will be the situation for parents in a case where the cost of the childcare is say $10 or $11 an hour and there's only $6 subsidy?
Yeah, look, we could look at that, and we certainly would, because we, as I say, we're pretty committed to reducing those barriers, but kind of reluctant as well once you start putting a really high price on it to find that services actually go towards that. We think that this should cover all costs for that child to be in childcare.
Will there be any kind of quality control on people who can qualify as providers and be eligible for subsidy payments?
So for the centres, they must be qualified, so they must have gone through, they must be through education, so they must be services.
So you're not opening up a new category?
No, although I must admit, I'm looking carefully at that guaranteed childcare payment and seeing, whether there are some informal arrangements that can be made. There's home-based care as well, which obviously you see through Barnardo's and organisations like that would be available for that childcare payment too. And I think it's a really interesting sort of dynamic to look at. You look at some that are quite Marae-based and some other kind of arrangements where the teen parent is on-site learning and, the baby's being looked after in the room next door. Now that you've got more formal arrangements with that teen parent unit, but you could equally have some more informal arrangements that might work as well.
So what guarantees can you give that people won't be replicating the American experience where some of the main beneficiaries of the shift to long-term work have been a new category of second-class childcare providers, and the people who are facing the work obligation have to take the standard that's on the market?
Look, we're working really closely with education on this stuff, and I would say that they have very high quality and demands that they make on it. There's rigorous checks and balances that go on those centres, and I'm very confident that that regime works.